You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org. I'm Allison Kane, and welcome to In the Sauce, a podcast about building consumer brands from the ground up. I love doing this show because I get to interview everyone from production gurus to marketing and social media mavens, anyone who can guide me on this crazy journey. This is the story of building Haven's Kitchen sauces, but it's also the story of every growing brand because we're all in the sauce. Today, I'm speaking with Sasha Shore, founder of Holy Chili, a new condiment company that all began with a COVID quarantine batch of everything bagel meets Chinese chili crisp meets Japanese furikake. Sasha is an award-winning creative leader, storyteller, and collaborator with a career that spans brand work in advertising, visual design, and creative strategy. She's worked with clients ranging from entertainment and gaming to emerging technologies and lifestyle brands. Sasha's been a creative leader for mega brands, including Samsung, Sundance, Vice, and NBC Universal. She's also led creative for Dwayne Johnson and his company 7 Bucks, overseeing strategy across media, brand partnerships, and digital content. Her work has garnered numerous industry accolades at Cannes, as well as Print Magazine, the Addies, the Women's Image Network, and like 17 more that I had to cut out because it's too long. Holy Chili is Sasha's first foray into founding a CPG brand and is available online in many independent markets across the U.S. and headed into Central Market this fall. It was recently featured in the Eater listing of Best Chili Crisps and as a gourmet gift worth giving in the Wall Street Journal. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
I know. We had this amazing conversation over drinks and chicken liver last week.
Yes.
And I just kept thinking the whole time we were talking, I wish that I had could record it, because you were saying all this stuff. And I was like, this is good stuff. So I was like, what are you doing Monday? And you're like, I'm coming on the pod. So before we get into all the good stuff, tell us all a little bit about Holy Chili. What is it? What's the story? Chili crisps abound. Why is it different? All that.
Yeah. I think that Holy Chili was born during a time when a lot of products that were very similar were born. There was a lot of people sort of doing interesting creative things. It was during COVID. I think people's sort of creative brains were working in overtime. And I think that, we were eating so much and people were sort of interested in, amplifying and elevating what they were eating. So it was kind of a fun time to start playing with food. And Holy Chili really was born because we missed New York, right? We missed all of our rituals. We missed, the Lower East Side. We missed Chinatown. We missed, all the Japanese spots in Midtown, like all the ritual kind of cultural foodie things that we do in New York City. And I feel like, Holy Chili was sort of a love letter to that because, it was a kind of a mashup or a combination of flavors that we call sort of, a New York style chili crisp. Sort of as an ode to the melting pot of New York. So basically chili crisp, furikake, and a few other products that we make, a dry crisp that's in a shaker. They're all based on sort of an everything bagel seed mix that we make. That's our own sort of version of it. There's a little extra stuff in there. There's black sesame seeds, there's poppy seeds, there's white sesame seeds, garlic. And then we added the component of Szechuan chilies in addition to a lot of other sort of magical spices and ingredients. So it became this sort of incredible condiment that we loved. So we applied it to a chili crisp and a furikake. So a chili crisp being sort of an oil-based crispy condiment. And then we chose to base it with a spicy sesame oil rather than a Szechuan peppercorn. So it was a slightly different vibe from all the other chili crisps that were out there that were more authentic. And then the furikake was more of a nori-based seasoning. So if you all are familiar, it's sort of a crushed seaweed. I know, Ali, you're a big fan of it.
I'm obsessed with that one.
It's kind of a sleeper. It's the one everybody seems to kind of really love and has come out as sort of become this sort of sleeper cell, as I like to call it. And people really, really love it. So it's the same blend of everything bagel seasoning, Szechuan chilies, and everything bagel seeds with the crushed nori.
The
crushed seaweed.
I have to say, I was just my content lady over here was like looking through the videos, and she's like, "What is that? What is that tuna? Like, what did you do to that tuna?" And I always like sear my tuna with like toasted sesame seeds, coating it, but I used the furikake in addition to that, and it just, it's making me salivate as I speak.
Tons of umami. It's got a lot of like really, really good flavor, really like fragrant, aromatic. Both of them are. And I think that kind of adds to their sort of, addictive quality. I think a lot of people are kind of, obsessed, which is kind of the word that I love the most when I hear people say that they're obsessed with something. That makes me the most happy.
So, it's one thing. I've talked to a few people on this show that started in COVID. But, there were obviously tons of people that were like, let's make, socks that do this. Like we all had sort of like a lot of time at home with these things, but taking it from, this is fun, let's mash up our favorite seasonings, and actually like making it into a product that is sellable and going into retailers and in people's homes. You have a full-time job. You were doing other things. Like how did you tackle, if you had to kind of draw out your mind map, what were your sort of hurdles that you had to meet, to give yourself the permission to keep going? And like, what were the things that you had to figure out? What are you still figuring out? What resource did you use? All of that,
I think figuring it out happens every day, just because I feel like, I think I mentioned this to you. I didn't, wake up and have a dream to start a CPG brand. So that was definitely something that sort of, we came upon. And I think that, once we started making some of it and giving it to friends and family and seeing people's reactions. And we, of course, have some really good friends in New York who happen to be photographers, and some influencers and some people that we knew just in our social circles and professional circles. And we just gave them to them as gifts, and they started posting about them on Instagram, and we started to see like the momentum. And that really was like, that was the fire, right? That was sort of the thing for us that was like, oh, wow, people really love it, like truly love it. And they were just putting it on everything, and they were posting about it on Instagram. And I think it was sort of born on Instagram, as I like to say, born in New York and born on Instagram. So I feel like it's one of these, rare situations where, it really was, the planets aligning in every way. So yes, it was COVID. Yes, people were looking for things to eat that were interesting and fun. They were looking for things to do, and we were looking for things to do. And I think that this was even like I call it like our chocolate peanut butter moment. It was sort of, we had a jar of chili crisp and a jar of everything bagel seed mix on our counter at all times that we were just putting on everything. And so I think this was like, I think I literally took the chili, like the everything bagel seeds, and dumped them into the chili crisp jar and mixed them up and added sesame oil. So it was literally that exact thing. So, and then we're like, oh God, and we really love furikake. That's the other thing we eat all the time. So then we made, our version of that. And it just sort of became this, like I said, like a fire that just sort of started slowly and then started crackling and burning. And to the point where it became something where we're like, oh my gosh, we have to start a company because people are asking for it. Like there's demand, versus, like having the idea first and then hoping people will love it. I think it kind of went the other way. The demand came so fast, and we were like, oh wow, people really do love it, and we really have to do something because they're asking for it.
And figuring out labeling and packaging and shipping and storage? Like, what was that like?
All that stuff. I mean, a lot of research, a lot of online research, a lot of asking friends who worked in those fields. I have a background in advertising, marketing, as you mentioned, and a lot of knowledge that I had and a lot of experience that I had, luckily, was super applicable to this. So I was able to set up all the, create the website. We were able to launch the Instagram. We were able to start, making really great looking content. And my husband is, a super creative person too. So I think both of us kind of put our heads together and really, dove headfirst into it and sort of figured it all out. It was sort of like when the people want it, you got to give the people what they want. Totally.
I mean, it is interesting, right? Because I think sometimes the idea of demand gets lost. I guess it's kind of a combination of the spotlight effect and, just founders being founders. But we think we've made something magical, and maybe we have made something magical, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone wants it. Or forget about everyone. That doesn't even necessarily mean enough people want it. And I think sometimes we run into the issue where like some people want it, but that doesn't cut through the noise. And something very early on was telling you that you were cutting through the noise. And I think your background knows what noise is and what signals are. Is
100%. 100%. And I feel like when you feel like the noise is real, and it's something that feels like, you have a real hunch and you feel like this is something that is really interesting. It's a bit of that aha moment where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe no one's ever thought of this, or no one's making this, or, they're not, at least going to market with it the right way.
Right.
And we could sort of use all of our superpowers, to take it there. And knowing that we had that kind of in the hopper definitely made it easier, because we had a lot of those things that a lot of founders, I think, are sometimes struggling to sort of, put together, right? All the resources, the packaging, the design, the social, the content. So not everyone knows how to do that, so I feel like it's hard sometimes.
Yeah. And, as you're saying it, I'm thinking about the aiolis versus the fresh sauces. And I hate doing this because I feel like I'm like comparing Marsha and Jan, and I feel really bad about it. But the reality is that the minute that the aiolis came into the world, it just feels different. Sure. It like LinkedIn feels different. Social feels different. Maybe it's because it's something easier to understand, or maybe it's because we launched it in a better way, and we launched it at all. We didn't really do that back in 2020 when we, went national with the fresh, but it's like a sniffer thing. Like you can tell when something hasn't. And I think, unfortunately, and I hate to be a downer here, but I think a lot of founders and operators keep pushing their products because they think it will catch on. And sometimes it does, a la like Zyn or whatever. But you can almost tell right away when there's a thing. And then you hear, well, it was built over, 25 years success story, but there was still demand. I think demand probably doesn't get talked about enough. So it's interesting to hear you say it.
Well, I mean, I come from a world where there's a lot of testing that happens. There's a lot of qualitative testing, quantitative testing, focus groups. I mean, a lot of people in the big brand world don't move a muscle until they've done all of that research up front. They've done all of this sort of, the true, data collection, the market, the audits, everything that they do, the demographics, everything. They test everything. So they don't spend $1 until they've spent many dollars in these sort of upfront phases of testing the market. So I think that, a lot of these, emerging brands really don't do a lot of that testing. And they just kind of, they think that there's something amazing there. And like you said, sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't. But I think that they really believe in it and they take it as far as they can, which is, I think is amazing, because I feel like the resources that are available to us to market something, to bring something to market these days are so much better and so much, so much more than what we used to have, that costs, thousands and millions of dollars.
Or even just e-com. I mean, going back to you, when you made a website, presumably you also made a Shopify, and that was how you were selling it, right? I mean,
we made the website on Shopify. It was the Shopify website. We used all of the tools.
And that's pretty much been the like heavy part of distribution for the last couple of years.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we were pretty much DTC, direct to consumer, for about, the first year or two almost exclusively. And then we really started to, branch out into doing more collabs, more partnerships, and then going into sort of smaller markets, smaller boutique stores, no distributor, obviously all self-distributed. So it's been a journey for sure.
So before we go to break, I want to ask about because it seems like e-com has been good to you. And I asked Ben from Lentilful this too. He has a very lightweight product that's easy to ship. Not glass. You do not have as light of a weight product. It's not as easy to ship, but you also have had tremendous success early on with really strong D2C stuff. So what would you say, if you had to sort of give these are my 3 hacks for like really cranking on direct to consumer, what would they be?
I think that finding like the real star products to kind of really drill into is really important, because I feel like some people have like a big line of products, right? And I think that becomes complicated, when you have like 6 flavors, or you have, 12 different variations, variations on products. I think you kind of get yourself, into a really tough spot really quickly. And I think there is a lot to be said for diversifying your line and really keeping things fresh and doing that R&D and continuing to put out new stuff. But I think, when you're first starting out, I think really digging into like your 2 or 3 key products and really going hard with those, really getting that feedback, really getting people obsessed and in love with it, really like, to the point where they don't care how much it costs to ship it, honestly, like it gets to that point where it's like, it's a splurge. It's a treat. It's something I want for myself. It's something I want for my family. It becomes something where the shipping, sometimes we ship to California and the product is $15 a jar and people will pay $12.50 to ship it to California. And I'm like, yay. I mean, it sucks. It sucks that it's that expensive, but it's like, but at the same time, they're kind of like, it almost becomes a non-issue, because they really love it and they really want it. And it becomes sort of something that, is part of their treat to themselves and what they really love. And they keep it on their counter, they put it on everything. And it's, it's a premium thing. It's a gift.
Right.
So that would be my advice.
Yeah, no, and it's great. I mean, I'm even thinking like we were just talking with our Amazon agency earlier and talking about product videos and whatnot. And, we do think brand, we think lifestyle brand, and they're like product, 1 pouch of 1 flavor with like, what is it going to do? What are people looking for? It's not like, a picnic with all the different, with people. They're like, they have no idea what they're looking at. And It's interesting because it leads me back to my interview with Justin from Bachans, who, if people haven't listened to, that is a really good one to listen to.
It's a great one. Yeah.
Bachans is like cranking. But he's very, very singular in his approach. I mean, now he has the different varieties, but on the same product, and that he set himself out that way. He was like, it's like Heinz. It's like Sriracha. It is,
Yeah.
So
and I mean,
it's also less expensive, by the way,
yeah,
to do it that way. Good call.
Yeah. And I also think that like people, once you get those like 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 key things out there, then you can actually start polling people. You can start talking to people, start getting feedback. You've developed a bit of a database. You have email addresses. You have people who are actually coming to you and giving you feedback or giving you ideas or giving you their input, which is amazing. good and bad. But you can start asking, like, what would you like to see more of? What would you buy if we put this out or that out? So I think then you have a bit of a captive audience. That you can a loyal fan base.
So helpful. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about treating your product like a celebrity. We'll be right back.
This episode is supported by HRN business member Radcraft. Beers and spirits should tell stories about brands, and Radcraft loves a good story. Radcraft provides communication support for the beverage industry, from breweries and distilleries to maltsers and their affiliates. Radcraft's partners are makers of thoughtful products and cultivators of radical ideas. Learn more at radcraftbeer.com. Radcraft supports HRN's creative, educational reporting and storytelling that drive conversations to shift the way we think about food.
I'm back with Sasha Shore, founder of Holy Chili. You had said the other night, a lot of your work has been with, The Rock. I guess we don't call him that anymore. Is he now just Dwayne Johnson?
I think he's Dwayne Johnson. I mean, I think he still maintains.
I like The Rock.
He maintains The Rock. I mean, he's a much deeper part of the WWE now. But I think, that's still his social handle. He's still pretty connected to that.
Yes. Okay. Because that's how I think of him, and that's how I always think of him. But anyway, part of that, and you were talking about celebrity talent, taking the principles that you apply to celebrity talent and then layering them on your product. But then it was cool because before the break, you said, you were talking about your star product. So I think I might call this like building a star. If that's I think I might go with that title. But talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what are the fundamentals? Like, someone said once to me, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. And I've never, ever forgotten it, because I'm like, that is, whether it's like the political campaign or the actor or the really good messaging, or like, I feel like the older I get, the more I know that like we need to get tighter. And I'm not good at that, clearly. So what are the things that, when you say treat your product like a celebrity, what does that mean to you, since you're good at this?
I mean, I think that celebrities have sort of become brands. They've become their own brands. And outside of, for someone like Dwayne Johnson, who's been in so many things and done so many incredible things in his career, a very long, storied career, and he's such an icon that he has, sort of become a brand. And there's a handful of celebrities that have that same kind of, vibe. And I think that if a celebrity can become a brand, why can't a brand become a celebrity? Right. And I think there's something interesting about that, because I think it does work both ways. Because I think that given the world that we live in, I think applying those same sort of brand principles, or applying the same principles, at least, to a product that you would apply to a celebrity, the way that you market them, the way you bring them into partnerships, the way that you sort of collaborate with them. I think there's so much, so much in common. And I think that those same principles of growing audiences and loyalty and community and fandom and obsessive desire, all the things that, celebrities as brands aspire to, and they want to sort of build themselves up to be brands, where they basically are not just the sum of, the films that they've done or the music that they make or the games that they code, but they become, a brand themselves, their own brand, and I think that becomes really interesting for things like partnerships and collaborations, because in this world that, in the social world that we live in and the way we market and bring things to market these days, I think there's a lot happening where these celebrities want to co-create. They want to build those audiences together with brands. And I think that works the same way again when you talk about brands, because I think that, using channels like PR and social and e-com and entertainment content are really critical to CPG, even as much as it is to celebrity. So I think those same principles apply, because we're watching them on the same channel, if you will. They're all on Instagram, right? If you're scrolling your Instagram feed, unlike watching TV or unlike watching streaming content on Hulu or Amazon, I think that the difference is that it all lives in that same space. They all live on TikTok. They all live on Instagram. They all live in these social channels. So they're almost equal in that way, right? They have your attention in the same way.
Right. Can we talk a little bit about PR just for one sec?
Sure.
Because, I was thinking about this, right? So like to your point, every celebrity is their own brand. The way that celebrities used to become celebrities was, People Magazine or Star Magazine or Vogue or whatever would sort of introduce them to the world. Now they introduce themselves to the world. And now other influencers and celebrities kind of introduce them to the world. I mean, food media in particular has just lost its mojo over the last, 5 to 7 years. And I don't know, except for listicles and Substack and the Wall Street Journal.
I mean, People Magazine's writing about food.
I know. I just, I guess I'm wondering, what your sort of high level thoughts are. Like, I totally get it in terms of you want to build community, you want to build loyalty, you want people to understand your vibe, even if they don't understand what movie you've been in, all of that. Partnerships can help with that. The way that you, do your content, certainly the choices that you make. But PR in particular, I'd love, because you've been in this industry for a really long time and you've seen the changes. And I love it when I get a real professional, experienced person. What's your take?
I mean, I think PR has changed a lot as a discipline. I think it used to be something that really spoke more to events and physical sort of launches and things where people would sort of gather to find news or to be sort of pitched to or to launch something new. I think now PR really is being used more as a marketing vehicle and a real sort of, launch machine in the way that it doesn't really have to be a physical event, right? So public relations, I think if you break it down, right, that actually meant physically being somewhere. I think, and getting that information sort of fed to you in that way, especially when you're opening a restaurant or you're opening a destination place or something somebody can actually attend. So driving audiences there was a big sort of moment for PR. And the same thing with entertainment. We used to use PR, for premieres and for movie launches and entertainment launches, things that, really alert the audience and the media to what's new and what's coming. But I think that, PR now really is about sort of the same way that it was distributing news or distributing those headlines or those launch moments, but doing it through so many different channels. So it's no longer just driving someone to a physical place or a destination or, a news moment, but it really is just about those headlines and launches. And it's about, utilizing some of that. But I think that we have so many ways that we can do that ourselves now. I think PR is really extraordinary as a discipline when it comes to like a big launch and really getting like some big information out there. But I think if we're launching like a new flavor of a sauce, I think that it's less of like a massive PR moment and more of just sort of a really cool kind of momentum building piece to, our everyday marketing.
Yeah.
So I think sort of rolling that in and having those kind of like peaks and valleys to kind of how you launch and how you build news is really, really important. I think that, having something new to say fairly often is pretty critical. I think it's critical to the algorithms. It's critical to the way that, social media kind of disseminates information and how quickly people engage with it. And how quickly that fire, starts spreading, especially if there's a viral moment. And I think that becomes like a real, a big benefit.
Were there any surprises to you along the way? I mean, having been sort of in the marketing world and the creative world for, your whole career, putting this out into the world, what surprised you? Were there any, again, going back to Ben from Lentilful, he was saying like he thought his consumer was, Madison, who was 24, but his consumer was Gail, who was 60. And, that was interesting for him. And he learned
We're
a lot.
definitely in that same boat.
Okay.
That was a huge surprise for us. That was a huge surprise. I think that actually happened very recently, to be honest, because when you have these sort of very nuanced audiences, kind of like your Gen Z audiences, your millennial audiences, people who are foodies, people who are, city dwellers that look for cool stuff and are always looking for the next big thing. But then when you go national, like when we were in the Wall Street Journal, I think that became like a real, moment for us where we were like, wow, there are people in like North Dakota and Montana and
there
like,
are people
I don't know,
there, yeah.
Nevada and Detroit and like all these places that are kind of like the middle of the country, right? Not New York or LA or Austin or Miami, but people who are kind of in the middle of the country, this 80% of the country, because we're not international, we're just in the US right now. But I think that became a real, eye opener for us where people are actually loving the product. We were getting like corporate orders for companies who were so excited to give this to their employees as a corporate gift or as a holiday gift. We were getting grandparents who wanted to gift it to their kids. We were getting grandparents who gifted it to their kids and then fell in love with it and bought it for themselves.
Right. Did it change your marketing though? Or did it change your messaging or your creative in any way? Like, did it shift something in you responding to that?
It definitely made us think about kind of how we talk about our product more, because I think that along with all of this amazing uptick in exposure and, obviously, business and numbers going up and sales going up, we also had a lot of questions. People are like, what exactly is this? Or what does this really taste like? Or, how come you don't talk about all of this? Like, we assumed everybody knew what Chili Crisp was.
Yep.
Because our label literally just says spicy everything Chili Crisp. And, there's more information on the back, but, there's more on the website, on the Instagram feed, but these people are not on Instagram. Some of them are not on, they're maybe on Facebook, but, so we really started to talk about more in our Instagram posts and our Facebook posts. And we changed some things on our website where we actually explained it a little bit more because there's a lot of, people definitely didn't know what Furikake was.
Yeah.
It was
imagine.
Definitely a very kind of global foodie kind of, much more modern understanding of what that kind of condiment is. Yeah. And then I think once people understood it better, it even opened up more doors. I think even more with like boutique retail, because they actually wanted to carry more products like this because they had 6 different Chili Crisps, but then they didn't have any Furikakes, for example. So they were excited to stock something like that felt very different and something that their customers would be really excited about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will forever, I think I'm going to be like 85 and still making my packaging more clear. It's just, I mean, I'm like, really squeeze it on your, like, what do you mean? What is it? And what do I do with it? And I'm like, okay.
People ask us every day. They're like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. What do I do with it?
Where's the recipe? I get, where's the recipe a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. People are like, what do we put it on? I'm like, you can put it on your eggs. They're like, before you cook them or after you cook them?
I know. It's wild. Yeah. Okay. Something I want to talk to you about that is not a fully formed thought, but I feel like you're the perfect person to talk about this with. Okay. I have noticed, and I mean, I think I said this, I'm sure I was not the first person, but I feel like I said this in like February that like instead of the lipstick economy, we're living in the condiment economy. And that there's this idea of like, exhibiting status, whatever that means to you. And there are all these different definitions of it through your grocery haul. Like there is something going on social where look at me, I buy this thing at Erewhon, or look at me, I cut coupons and this is how much I saved, or look at me, I waited in line for this thing, or I love Walmart and here's me in front of the Walmart pointing up and smiling, which never happened in the past. Like, so all of that is like some sort of social posturing.
We like to call it cultural currency.
Cultural currency. Love it. That's a good marketing term. And you and I were talking about sort of like food being kind of like pop culture, which tracks. But then there's this other big thing going on, which feels like this kind of contradiction, but I'm sure you'll find a way to make it not a contradiction, which is that, you know, everyone's rightfully complaining about food inflation and how everything is too expensive. And you know, there's almost this like hostility toward the grocery industry from consumers. Like people are angry at the same time as like, I feel like they're almost fetishizing it. So I would like your perspective.
I mean, I think what you said was really right on. I think that, you know, the cultural currency around condiments and sauce and everything else that sort of people, you know, I guess, embellish their food with, it becomes something that does become kind of fetishy in a cool way. I mean, for us, I think we enjoy that kind of fetishizing, but I get that there, you know, could be a little bit of backlash around it. I think part of it has to do with cost. It has to do with the fact that, you know, some of these condiments are, you know, way in a different category of pricing and budget than condiments ever were. You know, right. I think that the ketchups and the mayos and the barbecue sauces and even the srirachas of the world were, you know, within a certain price point. You know, they were all probably under like $7-8. And I think now we're living in a world where, you know, condiments are $15 to $20 a jar and nobody seems to be wincing. You know, and I think there's something interesting about that, because I totally agree with you, because it has become, you know, cultural currency in the way that people display them even. And you were saying like people are sort of, and I think that's cool, because I think in a way that it democratizes the category a little bit, because I feel like, you know, you don't have to be like the only chili crisp that anybody ever eats. Like, so people collect them. You know, we've seen the same way that a grocery shelf or like a boutique store shelf might have 10 chili crisps, you know, on a shelf. People mimic that in their homes. They're taking the cabinet doors off of their kitchen cabinets, their pantry cabinets, or they're putting glass ones up and they're taking photos and they're posting them on Instagram. And that's becoming a trend, but it's also kind of interesting because it's become more of something akin to the fashion space, right?
Or the beauty space. Yeah.
The beauty space. Yeah. Labels, logos. Yeah. So I think that having sort of like the it condiments has become something that, you know, people are striving towards.
Well, I guess in a way also in an economic, you know, downturn or whatever we're in, like a vibeflation, I think it's been called. Like, we're actually kind of okay. We just don't feel like it. The idea of spending, you know, I mean, we're $6.99 or $7.99. You're, you know, in the chili crisp world, 15 is very average. But, you know, compared to an $80 fill in the blank, you know, eyeliner.
But people are foregoing those. You know, that's so interesting, right? Because they're foregoing the it bag or the it shoes or the it lipstick, and they're actually going with the condiments, or they're spending their money in places like food, as well as, you know, throwing dinner parties, and those are not cheap, you know, and doing other things that are sort of socially sort of, you know, centered around food. And bring people together around food and bring people to your home, and they get to see all of your condiments that are on your shelf. Yeah. But I think it's become something where, you know, like maybe I don't need these 3 expensive things anymore, because that doesn't give me the same cred or clout with the people that, you know, I run with and what they value, you know, because people are, I think the values are shifting, right? So people's priorities are shifting, and how, you know, that's pop culture, right? And that is how sort of culture is built. And I think that's the same thing goes for celebrities and musicians and games and other, platforms and ways in which people are spending their money. I remember what was it, like a year ago when everybody paid like $8 to download that app that turned their face into like a gorgeous AI version of themselves.
Yeah.
And then they immediately deleted it. But like at that moment, $12 for that app didn't seem even remotely like a big deal, because then you got to like do the same thing everybody else was doing and post it on your Instagram. Like there's these moments in culture where you just, and some of them are not even fleeting. Some of them are just kind of part of the real sort of creating at the speed of culture.
Right. I think why I enjoy being with you, I think I'm getting curmudgeon-y. I definitely, I can hear it. I can feel it. I'm like, oh, like what these young people what are they, like I can definitely hear myself being like, what the hell is going on over there on TikTok? Like crazy town. You
I
seem tickled by it. I know. I got to get me some of that, because I know that I need to. I mean, obviously, I'm not the one doing it. Otherwise, it would be kind of funny.
It just all feels like it's kind of always alive, right? It feels like there's no like beginning or end to it. You're kind of always in the midstream, in the mid journey, no pun intended, of it all, where you're basically like, you're just kind of like treading water really fast because it's fun.
Yeah.
And there's
whereas
not necessarily,
I feel like that's exhausting.
it can be, but I think there's a lot of like vibrancy to it. And it really feels like, like the world is in a kind of an exciting place where things are building and people are excited about it and feels new.
So if you had to sort of, and this is a completely abstract question, but you're a creative, so I can ask this, describe, if you had to sort of paint a picture or use some words or give some sort of feeling about what is going on now in terms of trends and social media and where you think it might be going. Like, where do you think we go from here, considering all the, considerables?
I feel like there's a lot out there, right? And I think that everybody can agree that the market feels really flooded. Mm-hmm. And I think that we might be at like and you and I talked about this a little bit, we might be at a little bit of like a reckoning moment where it's time to kind of like edit the landscape a little bit, right? Because I think that there's so much out there, and some of it's going to be great and move on, and we hope that Holy Chili will be on that train, and so will Haven's Kitchen. But I think that not everything will survive, right? So I think it's a little bit of a survival of the fittest moment right now, and I think that people, really need to sort of hunker down and really figure out how hard they want this, or how much they want this, and how hard they want to work for it. So I think that it becomes like a real, every brand needs to do that, because I think that there's so much going on that there's only so much that a consumer can see. I mean, we don't see half the stuff that's on our feed. And it's already to the point where, the algorithms are starting to control kind of what we see and what we don't see, and how much of it we see, and whether it's paid and whether it's sponsored and whether it's, organic, whether it's viral. I mean, there's so many ways that things can go that I feel like, once we kind of tailor down a little bit, I think that's the future, is really making the really, really interesting things really great, and making them more iconic, and less like fleeting moments. So I think that there's only so much. It's almost
like we have too many, actresses,
too many crayons in the box, right?
Right. Too many reality stars and like semi whatever. And now we need to just like hone the field down to some like really good talent.
Totally. And I mean, I think that, television does it every day. Like, right. Some shows get, new seasons and some don't. Some of them die and go away. But I think, a real editing needs to happen, I think, in the CPG space right now, because I feel like there is too much, right? And there's only so many shelves, and there's only so many refrigerators, and there's only so many, places where this can be stocked and bought. Obviously, a lot of it lives online. It doesn't
Right.
have to have a storefront or a physical place to be. But I think that I
But
still
even
believe
online,
in that.
yeah, it's still very busy. I mean, Amazon is as busy as any place, and
Well, Amazon will
so is-
always be kind of like the, the Wild West, right? Amazon
Yeah.
Amazon can be boundless, right? But
Yeah.
I think that in terms of people's attention and people
Right.
really understanding kind of what they want and what
yeah,
they
and the
desire.
cost of being there. Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
No.
100%.
So, I think on just to follow that up, I think, we've talked on this show about, how to be the one that survives from a margin perspective, how to be the one that survives, from just a cash perspective. I try to be pretty well-rounded. I do tend to lean more into the marketing stuff because you tend to be guests that are a little bit more animated. But the fundamentals of business building around that survivorship, I feel like we've covered a lot. I guess my question for you is, when it comes to sort of the creative, and when you refer to kind of creating a modern brand, what's your survivorship? What's your plan on surviving? Like, what would you offer as someone who's been doing this for a very long time and seen brands come and go and wax and wane? Where do you think we need to be focused?
I mean, I think my experience is kind of also shifting, and I'm learning new things, and I'm having to sort of add on to kind of what I knew and potentially adjust what I thought was right, from based on this, amazing amount of experience that I have. But I think so much of it doesn't apply to the current landscape, and I think we're all kind of relearning it. But I think there's definitely some tenets to what's modern. I think design is critically important. I think that people buy with their eyes, people eat with their eyes. I think it's become, a real, it's table stakes at this moment, to enter CPG with high design.
Right.
I think that's a really, really important one. I think figuring out how to, maintain a really intense sort of consistent cadence of social content, is really, really important, and being able to sort of, map that across all the channels in which, your audiences are looking for you, or looking for things like you. And then I think that it's important to figure out how to build partnerships and collaborations, because I think that's how you become part of culture and not just a transaction. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it becomes something where people are emotionally attached to your brand because you have taken a step in a certain direction, or you've partnered with a certain other brand, or you have a platform that you want to stand on and build upon, whether that's sustainability, whether that's, a culinary greatness, whatever it is that becomes part of, the fabric of your brand and what's important to it. I think it becomes really critical to really take those parts and make each one of them completely exemplary.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
And I think there are so many, and people oftentimes like put their eggs in the wrong basket, right? And they think that it's all about e-commerce, and they're just going to take every avenue on in the e-commerce space. They're just going to sell, and that's great. But I think that, that to me feels like a harder road, because that's sort of people, that's probably approaching people's minds and their wallets rather than their hearts. And I think that when you appeal to someone's emotional state and you really make them love your brand and really fall in love with it, then it becomes something that is more long lasting. It's not just a single purchase and never purchase again, because that becomes really important too.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're creating these brand advocates that are basically MLMing for you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you buying, is somebody buying one of something, or are they buying it every month? And almost subscription style. And that's where you can build a real business, right? That's when you can start to really create some real, quotas for yourself, and really some benchmarks to hit along the way, that feel really, like something that you can build on, and what to expect, so that you can plan for things.
No, it's interesting, because one of our, KPIs, for lack of a better word, is always this like brand love. It came from
100%.
Mike Gelb when I interviewed him, however, a year or two ago. And brand love is like, how do you quantify that? And for the quant people, it's like, what do you mean? Like, but, again, it goes back to how many people are sharing this with people they love. How many people are across all these different things subscribing, and how many unsubscribes do we have from our email list? And, all of those things, they're a little bit tougher to measure. You have to figure out the way that you want to define it. But I think you're so right. And, that's the thing that will get you through. And going back to the very first thing we talked about like an hour ago was, do you have enough people that love it to get you through the next 18 months or 2 years? That's going to be this sort of dark age. And if you have enough people who love it, and you have the margins. No, this is what, Kevin said last week. If you have demand and you have good margins, you have a business, and so how do you find demand? And that demand is the same thing that you're talking about. It can't be one-offs, because then you're just churning and you're exhausting your resources. It has to be repeat. It has to be multiple subscription, just emissaries, obsession, as you said. It has to be. Otherwise, we don't survive.
I think you build desire that way. And I think that desire is what makes the $15 purchase okay. And the desire is what makes it.
So I'm going to change it from building a star to building desire. I love these, like, changing the titles in real time people are listening.
We're creating culture right now as we speak.
You and me right now.
Yeah, right now. It's interesting. Like when I was coming into the ad business, there was a really famous book called Love Marks. And it really sort of profiled brands like Nike and Adidas and Coca-Cola and all of these sort of iconic brands that people were just sort of obsessed with. And it's sneakers had that moment, right? When sneakers started to cost $200, everybody was like, excuse me, what? But then but people were paying it and people wanted more. And then they cost $400 and people still paid it. and then it was kind of like, oh God, we have something here, and then I think it becomes that moment where, that love that you have for a brand, goes beyond just, even what you can afford. It's just what you desperately have to have.
Right.
And that's what you want, right? That's the end goal. That's the real, that's the gold at the end of the rainbow.
That's the kit and caboodle. That is the holy chili.
That's right.
All right, Sasha, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was as much fun as our drink was. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the chicken liver with us, but we'll get that next time.
Next time.
And Liam, thank you as always for recording, and Heritage Radio Network for making this totally possible and me not have to hawk myself out to get sponsors. I appreciate it. Listeners, thank you for everything and for all of your notes. And I'm glad that the Kevin episode was helpful last week. And I love the DMs, so keep them coming. And I'll be back next week with another episode of In the Sauce. In the Sauce is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.